The adrenal glands are located on top of the kidneys. We have the adrenal cortex, which produces the steroid hormones and the corticosteroids. The adrenal medulla, which produces the norepinephrine and epinephrine, or adrenaline. And this is part of the sympathetic nervous system, which is all about keeping us safe. It's keeping us alert and keeping us safe. And controls, adrenal glands control cortisol activity, which are stimulated by environmental, emotional, and physical stress. So these environmental, emotional, and physical stresses are the things that stimulate the adrenal glands. And these are things we all have in our lives. You know, when I was growing up, my parents, grandparents, you know, huge stress is it going to rain? Are we going to get this crop in? Is there a good ginseng crop this year? You know, it was all about the weather and the earth and how the earth was functioning, and their lives were very earth-centered. And how could they, was there going to be enough food? And these were all stressors, and these are all very important stressors because they touch at our survival. You know, if there's not enough rain, there's not going to be enough food, are we going to make it through the winter? Do we have enough food? And if there's not enough rain, are there going to be any wild animals? What's happening with the animals? And if there's not enough deer, what are we going to eat? Or what about the rabbits? And my grandmother made mean squirrel dumplings. Are there going to be enough squirrels? You know, so, you know, everything, all their major stressors were tied into the health and welfare of the land around them and the weather. And we don't think a lot about that today because we get our food in boxes and packages. And I've been really happy to see the whole concept of eat local beginning to make its way back into our society in a broader extent. You know, I much prefer having my food come from Alabama than I had from China. Not just because of the global footprint, the carbon footprint, although that's a consideration, more because, you know, Alabama is where I'm born. Where my parents were born, you know, my grandparents were born here, and the soil, the air, the water, the minerals, everything about the land is already connected to my body through the generations. You know, through heredity, I'm already seasoned and attuned to this land. So eating food grown here only nourishes me for who I am right now. If I eat food from China, that's not necessarily going to nourish me. It's totally different minerals, ratios in their soil, their water is different, their air is different, and it's not mine. So my body could actually view that food as an invader instead of a nourisher, because it's so different from what it's always known and what came down through the generations to me. So eating local is always a good idea. When we have emotional stresses, these are the ones that build up. You know, our environmental stresses occasionally build up for chemical sensitivities, but we're pretty much aware of something and it's environmentally bad for us. Almost immediately, the hypothalamus goes, danger, danger, Will Robinson, and we know right then. Or we have an inkling. We may override that response, but we have an inkling. But emotional stressors are the ones that start building up in our body, and they happen over a period of time because we're emotionally invested in more than one level, in the situations that we are in. Whether it's our relationship or a work relationship or a child-parent relationship, whatever our relationships are in the world, we have an emotional investment. And these emotional investments in the whole idea of emotion as a stressor is a huge concept in Southern folk medicine. It's also a huge concept in Native American medicine, especially Cherokee Creek, of which I was trained in, but it's also a huge deal in African medicine, because here is where your real dangers come in. It's in the emotional stress in your life. These are the ones that can really kill you. And they can kill you quick, or they can kill you slowly over a period of time. They can maim you psychically, physically, and spiritually. Our emotional relationships. So there are a lot of remedies. In Southern folk medicine, you have two broad categories. One is physical illnesses, and the other are spiritual illnesses. And under physical illnesses, we have emotional and physical. Those are the two categories under what can happen in the body. And under spiritual, we have a supernatural. Here's where the other aspect comes in. And a lot of healers wouldn't, that's a special healer who'll tackle the supernatural, spiritual aspects of herbalism here in the South. But there are a lot of practitioners who still do. But emotional worryation was considered in that category along with physical illnesses, because immediately being in that worryation place is going to impact your physical health. Now, it may have a supernatural cause, or a spiritual cause, or a magical cause from somewhere out here, but it's still going to come to your emotions and then come to your body, because that's how the supernatural, that was the line. Rarely did supernatural go straight to your body. It first came to your emotions and then to your body. So the emotions were kind of viewed as that filter between God and the body, or between the devil and the body, Satan and the body, or between magic and the body. In the middle, you have emotions. So everything filters through that. So emotional things can creep up, and you don't know they're affecting you until you're already pretty sick, and your life is falling apart, or your body is falling apart. The whole concept of relationship in Creek medicine and Cherokee medicine is because of the effect of emotions on the body. And first, you had to be in good relationship to spirit. Then you have to be in good relationship to your tribe or community. And you have to be in good relationship to your family. And then you have to be in good relationship to yourself. And if any one of those relationships are out of balance, you're not going to be a healthy person, and it's going to show up in your physical body. So, and this is also true in African medicines that I was taught, or African American medicine, that your emotions, your relationships to the other people around you were more important in some ways than the food that you eat. They're more nourishing than the water that you drink. And if those relationships are not functioning properly, you're not going to be a healthy person. So a lot of the remedies in Southern folk medicine are how to stay emotionally healthy so that you stay physically healthy. And then we have physical stress as a stressor in our life. And physical stress can be like somebody who doesn't take care of their body and they drink too much. An alcoholic has a lot of physical stress. He also has a lot of emotional stress and definitely has some spiritual stuff going on out there. But the direct effect of the alcohol on the liver and on the systems of the body is a physical stress. You can have physical stress by overworked. A lot of people just literally work themselves to death. Just not always having enough calories or the wrong types of food to support hard physical labor. I mean, I grew up running around the cotton fields and having to work in the cotton fields, which is really hard physical labor. And we would have the pick sacks on our shoulders, and you start out light, but by the time it's time for cotton weighing time, you're pulling anywhere from 40 to 70 pounds of weight behind you that you're dragging, hanging off one shoulder. And you're having to pull and drag this and get it to where it was going, just one little shuffle step up the row at a time as you were picking. It was hard physical work. It was hard physical stress. And it would just wear a body out if there wasn't proper nutrition. I was talking to, one guy whose grandmother's grandmother was on the Trail of Tears and got moved from Alabama to Oklahoma. She got out to Oklahoma and she had the dream that if she stayed in Oklahoma, she would die, and she had to go home. She was 16 years old. So she walked all the way back to Alabama. Took her 2.5 years. And she foraged along the way. I mean, it wasn't like she hopped a wagon or a train and headed home. She walked and foraged and camped the whole way. And took her 2.5 years of hard living to do that. And when she came back to Alabama, married, moved into a community and became the herbalist in the community and had 2 children. But she only lived 10 years after she got back. And when she was dying, she said, "I'm dying because I wore myself out." My body could not handle, never recovered from the physical stress of having to do that, having that kind of trauma and lack of nourishment. And so people can literally work themselves to death. And I look at people who do boxing or fighting look at boxers. Cage fighting. You like Muhammad Ali, he just physically wore himself out. And that's one caution that professional athletes have to really pay attention to, not wearing themselves out because of overtraining. That is just a huge physical stress on the body. So there are a lot of ways we can over physical stress. Part of the syndrome of anorexia, maybe at one stage, is over exercising because of body image problems. So the person's not eating and over exercising. You're just using your own body for fuel when you do that. You're using your own muscle as protein, and it wears you out. So you have to balance out physical activity with nutrient intake to avoid that. The adrenal cortex produces the aldosterone, which inhibits sodium excretion and helps us hold our salt, which helps us maintain our blood volume and pressure. It also produces cortisol and corticosterone and some of the male hormones. It influences the body's use of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, suppresses the inflammatory reaction, and suppresses the immune response. And so I'll talk more later about the cortisol. The adrenal medulla is located at the center of the adrenal glands, and it is surrounded by the adrenal cortex, and it releases adrenaline and norepinephrine, which is released in response to fight or flight. Adrenaline release, when we get that burst of adrenaline, and there are a lot of snakes around in the area, and this year was a particularly bad year for copperheads. I saw several people with copperhead bites this year, all choosing to do traditional remedies instead of going to the hospital, and talk about a heart rate increase, adrenaline release immediately when you get bit by a snake. But, just kind of for me, seeing that kind of danger in the woods, whoops, snake, I'm ready to flee. I must confess, I'm a fleer. Not ashamed of it, I'm a fleer. Ready to get out of there, but I'm ready to get out of there because my adrenaline has released, my heart rate has increased, more blood is being pumped around my body. The blood vessels in my internal organs are constricting to allow more blood to go into my extremities. The blood vessels and the skeletal muscles widen to take on that extra capacity. And that constant release of adrenaline keeps us in fight or flight. So this is not necessarily a bad thing when we are actually fleeing from danger or fighting from danger or fighting in a dangerous situation. But it then becomes a bad situation when we're out of the immediate danger and our response doesn't go down. Or if we're in chronic stress, not acute stress, and we've got that level of adrenaline pumping all the time because we're in this just chronic stressful situation, like you can have in a work situation where you don't get along with your boss. Or you've been a free spirit all your life and now you're working for corporate America and you're having to learn this whole new way of doing things. Or when you've been the hippy-dippy herbalist and now you're going to go to work in a medical clinic and you've having to learn how to do things in a not free-flowing, totally intuitive fashion and learn new rules, and this becomes a chronic situation. Or if anytime you're in a situation that takes you away from your authentic self, who you really are inside, then you're going to have chronic stress and you're going to have this adrenaline release. And over a period of time, it's not going to be good for your body.